primary focus today is going to be talking about the Autodesk Construction Cloud and how we are able to utilize it as owners in order to get in fast and early on these projects so that we have better efficiency. We're able to make more informed decisions all the way from planning to bidding to project progress and completion. And then as these projects are going on, utilizing the tools within ACC to actually manage the assets that we have on a project as well. When we get to assets, I may hand it off to Vince just to give us a little bit more insight into that. But for now, we're going to read through a couple of slides and then go ahead and check out in real time what some of these tools are going to end up looking like for us. Oops. So the very first thing that I'd like to kind of catch up on is what exactly the Autodesk Construction Cloud is. This is a tool brought to us from Autodesk that is a web-based portal that we're going to use to actually optimize our work. Now, Autodesk has designed this to be useful for pretty much everybody across a project, the owners of the project themselves, the GCs, partners on the project, and everybody who is involved. One of the biggest points about the ACC is that it is designed to be a common data environment. So everything that you put into one portion of the ACC will work to filter through the other ones as well, so that you have, again, that single source of truth, that common data environment for us to be able to track information across the project. By using the ACC, you're creating one single point of truth, one site for all of your stakeholders, project participants, and again, owners, clients, and everybody else. Throughout the ACC, we have standardized practices for, like you see there, RFIs, submittals, document review, transmission. This could also include, tasks on a project, clash efficiency, and things like that. And when we look at that from an owner's perspective of building efficiency, we will be able to track the assets that are on a project, your HVAC, all of your electrical equipment, to be able to determine, when do things need to be serviced, how are they performing, and are we living up to the initial planning that we did to determine efficiency for that building. So within the ACC, we're also going to see a lot of tools that are designed to, again, efficiency is kind of the name of the game. So you're going to see that come up, and you're going to hear me mention that quite a bit. But there's other factors on a project to consider as well. Safety is kind of a big one, not even kind of, right? That's kind of a main driver for a lot of GCs and owners. We want our projects to be safe as we are going through them, and we want to be able to track the documentation of not only safety, but design, engineering, and the actual project progress as we go through. So to kind of expand on some of that, from the owner's perspective, there are a lot of benefits to using the ACC. One of those that I hear a lot from current clients who are owners is the ability to manipulate permission settings across the ACC so that if something is not relevant to one group of people, they simply don't see that information. I always explain it as eliminating some of that analysis paralysis. We are giving people the information that they need to be successful in their position without bogging them down with extra details or confusing information that they don't need. As we go through here, you'll also see some workflows that we're able to do in order to automate processes. That will come through in things like design reviews. That's going to come through in different RFI and submittal workflows. So what we're able to do is put these tools in the hands of our contractors and say, this is how we want these set up, and we know that they're utilizing them the way that we intended them to be. And again, a majority of these other ones are all about efficiency. So the ACC acts as that single source of truth, that common data environment. So we get up-to-date information all the way across the project from, again, design to construction. Those updates are going to happen in real time, and we can do this all the way from the very, first thought of a project until we get to that closeout point. Once we do hit closeout, that's not exactly where the ACC ends. It stays in your back pocket as a tool for, again, you to be able to manage those facilities, manage these projects that you have now completed, and be able to follow up with how those tools are going to go ahead and work for you in the future. And a big primary driver for using the ACC especially from the owner's perspective, is going to be these early interactions, getting in all the way from your planning process, all the way through to actually bidding on a project and then working on that project. As we all probably know as construction professionals, being kind of ahead of the game, I think this is true for probably every professional, but being ahead of the game is a huge asset to you as an owner especially. So by utilizing the various tools within the ACC, you're going to be able to be involved from that very first step, right? That very first thought that you have a project, to go out, find bidders, and then take that all the way through the various steps as you go through your project. So a few things that we're going to look at today, TradeTap and Building Connected Pro primarily. These are going to be how we are actually able to source and contact bidders for projects and then manage those bidders once those bids actually do come in. We do have a section called BIM Collaborate Pro. This is going to be working on coordinating design progress, tracking issues, clashes, tasks, and progress. We will kind of hold off on that for now because some of the information for that comes through from Autodesk Build and our Docs component, and we'll look through a few of the various tools that are in there as well. So I'm going to switch over here and we're going to get into the actual ACC platform. So this is our main landing page. This is acc.autodesk.com. And this is going to link all of the projects that you are currently a participant in, or again, as an owner, you'll likely be on all of them. It will include all of the projects that you guys are actively going ahead and using. Autodesk has worked hard to make this a very user-friendly experience to get across to multiple different apps. And so you can see up here in the very top right, we have more Autodesk products listed, and those are going to be these Building Connected and TradeTap that we're going to talk about today. All I would have to do is really go in here, click, and I would get into those. I have gone ahead and opened them already, so I'm just going to switch windows here, and we're going to start with TradeTap. So TradeTap is essentially our opportunity to go out and say, you know, hey, we're building this project. Who in this area is going to be able to help us build this project? This is built up off of Autodesk's database of qualified contractors in the area. And if I go up here and I say invite new vendors, I'm able to go in and start actually seeing who in my area is able to help me on a project. As an owner, I want to be able to go in here and just see what my options are, right? We want to make sure that we are finding the people who are going to do the best work that they can for us at the price that we want to still be making money off of these buildings while knowing that we're getting a good product. We can do this multiple different ways. We can say that they have an office within 50 miles, and I can go ahead and I can give this an address in here, and it will help me go ahead and find some of these. I can also, these are all of the contractors in my current area, 3,848, that's quite a lot. However, what I can do is narrow this down now even further to the ones that are actually specific to me. You know, we have an elevator guy here. Maybe I don't actually have an elevator in my projects. By clicking into this, it is going to give me a drop-down menu, and I'm going to go ahead and use the example of concrete for now. And we'll see we're now down to 180 contractors in my area. At this point in time, I'm able to actually go ahead, select my contractors, and I can add them to this project that I'm working on. I get their contact information, and I'm able to say, hey, we have this coming up. We would love for you guys to put in a bid and see what you guys can come up with. You know, we've heard great things, all that stuff. So once I've gone ahead and I've actually invited these contractors to bid on these projects, the next step is actually receiving those bids and looking at what they can do for us. So now I'm going to, once again, switch windows here, and we're going to move our way into Building Connected, right? Working our way through the ACC. Within Building Connected, I am currently looking at an active project that I have on here called Big Bonnie's Bowling Alley. And what we do is we go through here and we create these bid packages. Inside of these bid packages, we're going to include specifications. We're going to include, you know, what kind of work we actually need to have. And this is what we're going to be sending to those contractors that we find in TradeTap. We're going to say, hey, you know, it looks like you fit with this particular concrete bid package that we have. I can go ahead and I can look at it. I send them a bid form and they go in and they tell us, okay, for your slab on grade, we can do this quantity at this cost. So now we have early results. We've gotten that bidder onto our project as soon as we can. We've gotten all of this into one single source of truth. And once we have our bids on this section, we now get to look at what people have actually submitted to us. You can see right here, I have soft awarded Apex this particular job. Azul Works comes in as my apparent low just for a few different various reasons as we go through here. It has since been leveled so that they match. But then I went ahead and I looked at Joseph J. Albanese. And again, I didn't actually think about this, but I apologize if any of you work for any of these companies. This was purely as an example. I input all of this data, so just a quick little caveat there. But we look at this company and the person who bid on this project, they were only going to do 3,800 instead of 4,000. You know, the pricing was good, but at that point, maybe we haven't had a good experience, or maybe we just know that that's not a real cost and we don't want to deal with it down the line, right? The whole point is just seeing what we are actually going to be able to do on our project to organize these bidders. Now, again, moving our way through the ACC, once we have our bidders and we know who we're working on these projects, our next step is to get into Autodesk Build and Docs. This is going to bring us in. I'm going to go ahead and click here into our home screen for Build. Build is where we will go ahead and we will actually initiate these projects, and we will now be able to get the contact information from our, awarded bidders and say, hey, this is where we're hosting our information. This is how we want to do this. Here is all of the files that you need. Here's how you can submit your questions, and we can track all of this. As we go through, a lot of this is going to be related to project management, but some of the bigger things, files. Right? As an owner, you want to be able to see the files that get brought onto your projects, and you want to be able to share files out to those who are actually working for you. This files folder has a lot of flexibility to it and provides a lot of the owners that I work with on a regular basis. Excuse me, if I click files, that'd be a lot more helpful. A lot of the owners that I work with on a regular basis, this turns into a little bit of their bread and butter. Now, this works across the ACC. It works into Docs. It's going to work into various other tools that we have in here to actually go ahead and define out who has access to what. As we're going through here, maybe as an owner, I want to see all of the photos, but I want those specifically to be to me. I can make sure that this particular folder is going to be hidden from view from others. That way, we're not getting bogged down in again, that analysis paralysis. We want to only see what is relevant to us. So I can limit these down and keep us onto the same track that we want to be on for our project management. We can store pretty much every file type within here. You can see I have a couple of Revit files, a CAD file, PDFs. We can do PowerPoints, Word documents, Excel. So owners are now going to be able to, rather than just keeping everything on a separate server, have it here so that they know what permissions are in place and who is accessing their information. Another thing before I move on to the next topic that I particularly enjoy about the ACC is that everything that you do, every click, every move that you make is tracked. When we are going through workflows like RFIs and submittals, you see every step of those processes. And when we are talking about just a single file, for example, I can go over here and I can look at my file activities. Now, this is going to tell me that in the last 30 days, somebody has viewed it. And then if I go into the last 3 months, I can see exactly what has happened. Viewed the file, created a transmittal. If I had downloaded, that would show up here too. So as an owner, you are now going to be able to see, okay, we have these people working with us. We know that they have seen our information, and we are confident that they are getting their work done. Somewhere down the line, they say, well, I never got this. I never saw it. You can always double check to verify, yes, they did, no, they didn't, so that you have that power in your hands to kind of make those decisions about how to proceed from there and go forward. The next one that I have gotten particular interest in from other owners as we go through here is going to be the issues tool itself. Now, this is kind of one thing that my coworkers and I discuss. The issues tool is amazing. However, we almost kind of think that it should be renamed as tasks, right? It may not necessarily be an issue, but maybe it's just something that we need to have done on a project to make sure that we're moving forward. Now, if we're looking at this as an owner, maybe you're just doing things to plans, right? You're tracking what you want, changes that you make. If you're having safety issues with a particular trade partner that you're working with, we can go ahead and we can keep those in here as well. And these work by going through and we create one. I'll go ahead and use this missing documentation example here, for example. And we just go, we give it a title and a status. We narrow it down to a very specific type. So we can customize this list. I typically see a wide variety of these. For maybe some of my architecture clients, these look totally different than what some of my owners put in theirs. But that kind of feeds back into the beauty and the usability of the ACC, being able to customize it for whatever your needs particularly are. These issues come in handy as we go through here because we can also associate these directly into our assets tool. With assets, that is going to be our actual physical facility management tracking, right? When we get assets onto a project, when we get our HVAC equipment, when we get our plumbing installed, what is happening with those tools? And that's where the assets tool is going to come in handy and be really useful. And these issues help to build into that. So if we're looking at an HVAC system and we say, okay, well, we need to come back and do some maintenance. Maybe we have a maintenance issue category up here that we're then able to attribute into those assets for better facilities management and tracking. There is quite a wide variety of a few other tools within Build. Docs works very similarly, and they work back and forth together. So if I do things in Build, they show up in Docs when it comes to my files and my issues portion. And then those are also going to, on the Docs side, that will include, design reviews, that can include transmittals of files to share them out as well. For where I'm at with my timeline here, and just based off of what we've seen so far, the next big portion within the ACC that is beneficial to owners and when it comes to facilities management is going to come through in this assets tool. So I'm going to go ahead and I will pass this one off to Fulton, or Vince, I suppose. Sorry to throw that loop for you, Lori. So we'll give it to Vince to talk about assets.
Cool. Let me pull up a quick project here. All right, so kind of keeping with the theme that Shane was talking about in terms of the operations and facility management, one of probably the more underutilized, at least from what we see, underutilized tools within the Autodesk Construction Cloud really is the assets tool. So from an owner's perspective, the system will allow you to, through construction and then completion of construction into operations, use the assets tool within Autodesk Build to track status and maintain updates and store reference material to planned assets within your projects. And it doesn't have to be a building project, as you can see on my screen here. Some of the assets that I've created, I believe this came from a Revit model when I set this up a long time ago. But these can just be really any assets that are either stored within a model environment, or these can be imported as a completely separate, we'll call it a flat component. So there's multiple ways of creating an asset directory within your ACC projects. And let me just show some of the key points, and it doesn't really matter which asset I pick here. I'll just pick the first one here, the sable palm tree. But within that asset, we have kind of the details about that. So general information here, I'll call this out of the box because I believe all of the items that I see here, except for this plant ID tag, are out of the box parameters that can be stored within the asset. But probably even more powerful, we have this references tab. So if you can envision tying information to a particular component, say you've got equipment in one of your facilities, and that has natively, it's got an ID or some type of tag associated to it. There are a lot of different ways via the mobile app, the ACC mobile app, that we can actually scan the data like a barcode or a QR code that's attached to that asset, pull the asset up in the field. And then if we want to, if we've already attached reference material like operations manuals, or if there's a maintenance ticket that's created from an external system, we can create some integrations to tie them to the appropriate assets. So really all of this information, email records, files, forms, issues that are created within the Autodesk Construction Cloud can be associated to these assets within your project. And another thing that we can do from a cost perspective, maybe there's a little bit of creative ways of tracking like capital assets within projects, but we could also associate things like unit costs and potentially if there's maintenance on an asset during operations, we can start to track that budget information or capture the cost information to support service tickets and things like that within ACC. Now it's not necessarily an out of the box like turnkey solution in that regard, but because we have the data point, this item as an asset, we can be creative in the ways that we link the information, potentially cost information, service records, tickets to these particular assets. And I'm sure that Fulton will go a little bit deeper on the facility management piece. But ultimately, when you set your assets up within an ACC project, let me go into the settings here. So we have the ability I mentioned to either map 3D models, and this will accept Revit models, DWGs, and Navisworks NWCs, I think maybe an NWD. I'd have to check the file formats. But through the models, we have these really enriched 3D models that either the design teams are creating or being provided from a consultant. We can use those models and all of their metadata that's associated to things like Revit families and start to map the assets. So it's basically scanning the model that we upload, and then we have the ability through the assets tool within Build. Let me click on this. To map assets based on the parameter information that already exists within the models that you're uploading into your projects. What's great about this when we use the model-based assets is not only can we track them, like what I was just showing on the previous screen as sort of an itemized list, but if these assets are in fact part of a model and that model exists within your ACC project, which would be a requirement, you can track status, like if something is installed, if it requires maintenance, and in those 3D views within the ACC, I'll show the different status colors, but it will actually use a color scheme to apply those colors to the assets within that 3D environment. So you can start to kind of view either construction project progress or potentially different status of maintenance. If the ticket's created and it's linked to the object and it requires maintenance, we can have those flag in a certain color. Now, there are other Autodesk solutions outside of ACC, primarily Autodesk Tandem, that will take that and go a step further for facility management, facility maintenance, at a very rudimentary level. If you're trying to track information and store them within the project, even post-construction, we have a lot of owner clients that are kind of setting up this environment to support that information that's tied to assets, and then utilize the mobile app to pull an asset up in the field, attach an issue to it, or change the status from operational to it requires maintenance or shut down, whatever that might be. So kind of pointing out here that within these models, I pulled from landscape, planting, trees. I've mapped those assets, and that's what we were seeing on the original screen. And I just used some simple import rules to pull from the properties. So this is if I wanted to map new assets. I've already done so in this, but you can search for the Revit properties to start to group things into categories and create a hierarchy for your assets within the project. want to keep this pretty high level, so I'm not going to dig into the technical details there, but I will show that we can create those different categories right up front, so keep our assets organized. The more organized you are here, the easier it is to navigate and find your assets within the mobile app. If they do have barcodes or QR codes assigned to them, then you simply have to scan that and it will pull it up in the field. But then also, let me go into 2 status sets. So within each different asset, we have the potential to create individual status sets. So if we have a different status for plants versus mechanical equipment, we can create different status sets that support the functionality or the different statuses that you want to track within any particular category. So for example, plants, we have specified, ordered, delivered, and planted, where maybe for structural, maybe we have ordered, manufactured or fabricated, delivered, installed. So you are able to update and add statuses. So if I wanted to add the add an additional status to any element, let's make that a nice, let's change that to maybe blue color. We'll move that up. We have full customization over creating our own status sets and applying them to different categories. So it's kind of a cool thing there. And really, if we're integrating any FM solution or any field ticketing solution into the Autodesk Construction Cloud, we just need to find one data point to connect the asset from the external ticketing tool to the asset information within Build. And that's all available via integration through the ACC APIs. Beyond that, just like to point out, if we do need to create custom fields or anything like that plant ID tag that I have in this project, we are able to create that. And if we wanted to map information from the models that we're uploading to populate this category or this custom field automatically, then through that same mechanism I was showing before, we would be able to map asset information to specific categories. So, or sorry, specific custom fields rather. So pretty cool stuff there. And I think, let me see. Oh, I mentioned that beyond just models, we are able to create line item assets one by one. So if it's just metadata that you're inputting with custom fields, it can still be linked to external solutions like Archibus or any type of like maintenance ticketing system that you're using within your jobs. So it doesn't have to be assigned to a 3D model, but I'll just show you here if we do click on, let's see. There's my model link here. If I extracted this from a model, I should be able to see, check a different item here. Shoot. Oh, all right. I have these separated in this project. Sorry, it's been a while since I uploaded this one. Let's see if I've got anything here. Interesting. So I must have set this project up without any model assets, but I promise you these do actually link to, let's see, progress tracking, maybe this project here. These items are extracted from the 3D models, and apparently I don't have any in this one. So probably have an example in one of my many projects somewhere to show you that, but based on the status that's assigned to an individual asset, if it is extracted from a model within the project in the 3D view or even directly from the assets module or assets tool, you will be able to pull up the 3D view and view the different color statuses that are applied to those model assets. I don't know why this one, that's interesting. Let's see. I definitely mapped it, but anyway, I don't want to take up too much more time with that piece, but I did want to mention that beyond the 3D objects, you are able to create individual assets that are not linked to a model, or you can use an import to set your assets up. So this is just based off of a CSV format. You can fill out your asset information within that import and basically upload line items of the different assets that you're managing via that flat format that I mentioned originally to create this asset log. So I think that is about it for me. I'll kick it over to Bolton.
Okay, so what I want to pick up with is the concepts of once the building is in place and you're operational. It is good to see all this coming together and being able to be tracked and the real assets being added as the construction is done. And once you complete that project, then you have something that can be brought into an FM system or a CMMS system or other asset type systems. So here we're looking at some assets that are coming from a 3D model. And you see not only that they are in place, but they also have connectivity that is important. And one of the things we want to think about is what kind of data do we want to have when it comes to these kinds of efforts. So in any of these systems, you're going to be able to see when I pick on a particular asset, what kind of information do I have about that asset. So here I'm going to click on this system and into a cooling tower. And you see, not only are you seeing information about that tower, but you're seeing it's where it can be in a floor plan. You're seeing connectivity into a system. So all these things are being captured as you're building the original models and as these models are updated through time. But you want to make sure that this connectivity kind of survives all the way to where you can use it to do what you need to do. And so in these systems, you're able to see how various pieces of equipment are put together, how they are able to see information about that, see pictures of it. You can see teams, custodians, what spaces that particular piece of equipment serves. You can see details about it. You can create work orders from here. You can see all the activities that are available in this particular piece of software. So you have a number of different things that you're trying to look at once. And of course, the challenge as an owner is to decide what is important. And that is the critical factor, because you have a lot of information that you could use, but which pieces of that information do you really want to keep up with and track? So here we have some information about this particular piece of equipment. We have a code. So we mentioned that earlier as Vince was talking, that we need something that makes that connection for us, that says, okay, this piece of equipment has a unique identifier and is going to be able to be used throughout the system, and we're going to be able to go back and forth. We also may have standardization of that piece of equipment. We may have classifications that are associated with that piece of equipment. So you have a number of things that you can track in these systems and that are being captured even from the beginning. But in the life of the project, it becomes very important that everybody along the way is keeping all this up. And then you're making decisions as an owner of which pieces of this information do I really need to use on a regular basis, because those are the ones you want to be able to keep up. If you don't keep those up, then people begin to lose confidence in the data that you're providing. So it's important to choose. It'd be better to have less that you're confident in than to have a whole lot that is not as accurate as you would like for it to be. So other things you can track here is the specific location of an item, both from a building perspective, where it is on a floor, what room it's in, if it's near columns, but also from a GPS perspective, so you can track all those kinds of things. You can talk about how it's being used. And so you have prioritization, how important this thing is, how long it's going to last. You can do reporting on those kind of things. You can determine based on your activity, whether it be work orders or preventive maintenance or other types of activities, whether this particular piece of equipment is getting beyond its life expectancy, so now it's time to replace it. So there's a lot of analysis that you can begin to do because you've captured this information. You can also hook up these things to building automation systems. So not only can you get current information about what's going on with a particular piece of equipment, but you can also initiate other activities from that, either a work order or an alert that somebody needs to go and attend to that, or things of that nature. You can track costs. So the costs from the beginning, how much it costs now to replace it. You can track depreciation. You have warranty services, all kinds of things that can be helpful to you. And all these things, again, are being captured in the process, but are they making it all the way to your FM system? So you want to be aware of that. You want to make sure that it's happening for you on a regular basis. So the thing that I wanted to emphasize here is that data, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of connectivity, there's a lot of relationships that are being formed in this process, and we want to make sure they get to that point where you can really take advantage of them on a regular basis as you do your daily activities. So I'll give it back over so that we can have some questions.